Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Four Sober Chicks. I am joined, as always, by Heather and Dana. And today we have a guest, Danya, aka Dani. Dani, I'm going to read your bio really fast and then we will jump into it. So, Danya Katrina, sometimes known as Dani in the recovery space, is a filmmaker, poet, writer, painter, and creator of the series The Lighthouse Projects, which is a documentary series focusing on leadership, transformation, and spiritual awareness. Some of her greatest inspiration comes from the places she's lived and studied, from quaint island cities to magical mountain towns. Dani's nature is to connect with the people and places where she feels most free. Dani believes when we surrender to what no longer serves us, we can open our hearts up to all the beautiful, wild possibilities in this life as we continue to seek out our own inner truth and we begin to make an impact with our stories and experiences. Residing currently in Canada and the proud mother of two beautiful daughters, Dani's passion focuses on creating written and visual content with a strong poetic voice that stirs up emotion and further leads to generational healing. Dani resonates with light seekers such as Drew Barrymore, Jamie Kierlima, and Marianne Williamson, who said it best: as we let our light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. That's beautiful and almost poetic in itself. So with that, welcome. We are super excited to hear your story and where you've been and where you're going and where you are now.
Wow. Thank you first for having me. Honestly, this is emotional just listening to that. Wow, like waterworks are starting and they're real. Heather resonated with me so much and she recovers. I felt her. I just knew I'd work with her somehow. It's just that intuition. And I listened to all of your stories in my car as I was journeying along this wild ride of recovery, coming specifically from treatment. I left for that destination last year, March 11th, 2023, and I've been sober since. So yeah, you guys were in my car with me. I would hear your voices, and I do a lot of meetings in the car, and yeah, it was just quite a beautiful thing. I re-listened to a few of your guys' stories, and a lot of tears there too. So I'm just going to take you back, like in Meredith's story. She said it's important to like just give you a little bit of background of where I'm from and how it all began. So buckle up. So I was born in a little desert town in Osuyas, British Columbia. It's on the Sonora border between Washington. It's a anomaly kind of in Canada. It's a desert. My parents met there, and they were in the restaurant business, hotel business. So needless to say, it was the 70s, and it was kind of wild, you know, smoking Kenny Rogers, Rita Coolidge, you know, it was a lot of alcohol around. So that's where that sort of came in. My mom studied at Cornell University and she met my dad in this little desert town. And I can just imagine them there actually. So they got divorced when I was 8 and my dad left Shirley for Carol. And so me and my mom and my sister packed up in our brown station wagon and we headed to Kelowna, British Columbia. And that's in the Okanagan Valley. And it's kind of the California of Canada. We have mountains, we have lakes, we have orchards. It's beautiful. My dad passed away shortly after when I was 8. Alcoholism. Yeah. And my mom built a great life for us in Kelowna. She was a single mom in the 70s, and it was taboo at that point to be divorced. We were, I would say, lower middle class. She was on minimum wage, but we had a good life. And back then it was so simple. Like we just played in the trees and the orchards, and, you know, a few sports were content for us as kids. And that was my inner, I knew spirituality early on. It was on the soccer field and the basketball court where I shined. I got that, I guess, first dopamine kind of rush. And so I met a girl and her name was Shanti, and she invited me to move with her to Victoria when I was 15. And I was like, let's go. And I asked my mom, and she said it was okay. I wanted to pursue the basketball and the sports a little more. So we went there. We moved to Victoria Island, where I think some of you are familiar with. Don Nichols, the founder of She Recovers, lives there. And that's magical too. You know, just the whole different vibe there from the Okanagan, the sea, and all of it was just mesmerizing for me as a 15-year-old girl. And I shined there as well. My friend who invited me to go ended up going back the next year, and then I stayed because my coach wanted me to play basketball. And so then I got to see the other side. It was upper middle class I was living with, like, you know, a very affluent family that was very generous and very beautiful to have me and host me. And I saw sort of the other side of things, and I didn't want to go back. And I never returned to my mother or my sister. And I stayed in Victoria. And I was going to pursue the basketball, but I got invited to go tree planting. And just a little bit of background, in high school, it was like everyone, you know, we were partying on the weekend, and that was just a rite of passage, drinking a lot. But then, you know, it was cool at the school I went to do well in school, which was awesome. So I did well in school, but I got this invitation to go tree planting, and that was another wild ride. I don't know if any of you know about it, but it's an extreme endeavor, to say the least. But I took my passion in the sport and poured it into the movement and the dance of planting the trees. And I stayed in that industry while going back and forth to university for about 8 years. And I made a lot of money and pursued, you know, to make my way to a little mountain town called Nelson. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's a magical energy spot. Yeah, there I discovered potlucks. Again, a lot of drinking, but still stayed true to my mountain nature. I was spiritually charged by mountain biking and snowboarding. I felt God in those mountains, like I really did. So the high of the partying didn't outweigh at this point my drive to excel in that area. And through the tree planting days, I met a girl on my crew, and her name was Monique, and she just captured me. She was a writer and a photographer. I was a sporty spice kind of girl in the mountains. And she said, I'm going to Alaska to write a book and to take photographs. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. Like right there, it was that power of the connection of seeing someone, being inspired. And so that summer I met her in Montreal, and she introduced me to photography. My first Pentax K1000 back in the old days, you know, film camera. And so I spoke that out loud to the universe, and I really believe in this energy. And I didn't know it back then, but I spoke that that's what I wanted to do. And lo and behold, I found a little brochure in a quaint little coffee shop in the West Kootenays. And it was, you can go back to school and get out of the soul culture industry, and you can get this grant. So I applied for it and I got it. And off I went back to Victoria to study photojournalism. And again, through that period of my life, I was drinking. Like I enjoyed the social aspect of things. Sorry, I'm just following my timeline here. And I'd met a boy in Nelson at that time. I'd went back, and he followed me to Victoria, and then we headed off to Australia after. And I was like, I will do nothing with this career. Like, what am I going to do with it? You know, work for a magazine. I just didn't feel the call at that point. I got pregnant in Australia. Back to Nelson with the Aussie, and Gracie was born. And it was like Christmas. I was young and I always wanted to be a mother. And she just, yeah, anyone that has kids, it's like this prize. And I had a bunch of friends in the little small community, and they were like, take pictures of our kids. And back then it was like no social media. Like we weren't looking on Pinterest for ideas. I was looking in magazines and Gettys, all that stuff. So I started like dressing up these babies in flower crowns and doing black and white photography, mostly biking down to Walmart with my film and laying it out. And people were like, wow, you know what you're doing. Like, this is great. So I was clicking with the art. And so the Aussie and I decided we're going to head back to the Okanagan to be with my mother and the girl that invited me to Victoria in the first place, just because it was a bigger city. So off to the Okanagan we went, and pursued this career in the arts, which back then it was all film. So it was just, you're shooting and you're hoping a wedding, everything's going to come out okay. Nothing's like, you're not checking. Hadn't moved into the digital world then. Didn't work out with me and the Aussie. Won't get into details, but he gave me a beautiful gift. And that was my daughter, Gracie. So next came Prince Charming. So I thought. And right, I don't even know. He showed his colors very true on in the relationship. He offered me a lot. He was opposite of the laid back Aussie. He was a very bold, strong, professional person who we did have a good match together. I was young and he was a bit older, and he wanted another child. And he saw that I was ambitious. And so we got together, and he was very aggressive. He was very abusive and controlling. It was, I would say, subtle at the beginning, but not really. Like the red flags were there. But me, being a determined person, thought I may fix him. May fix him wasn't even the word. I thought this wasn't real, actually. This wasn't real. I'd never seen someone go from 0 to 100. Like it was actually, now that I've done a lot of these groups over the last year, it was dysregulating and it was shocking. My system was in shock, and we were quite deep into the relationship at this point. We were building a home, and again, he had a lot to offer. There were good parts. He wasn't, it wasn't all day long type of thing. But that's when my drinking started to amp up. I would hide my alcohol, and I would drink before most gatherings, definitely before he got home. I mean, that was a must. But because he had his anger issues, it almost canceled out my drinking problem. We both had issues, and it sort of made it okay to continue. So this is when I noticed I was starting to lose the things that were important to me as our relationship progressed. By this time, I'd gotten pregnant with our second child, Ashton, who again is such a gift, and I am forever thankful for him for that. But his status mesmerized me, and there was a passion with the risky behaviors we were doing. And it was somewhat dangerously intriguing. How bizarre is that? I held on to so much hope in that relationship. My energy got spent on desperately trying to please him while losing myself slowly along the way. And then I poured the rest of the energy I had into my business, which was thriving. I was doing a full-time photography business. I was one of the most sought after people here in the Okanagan Valley. I was told that I pulled the essence out of people. I mean, I was in a calling that many would be happy to be in. So I wanted to honor that, and be in that. So I gave a lot of myself to that. And I enjoyed it, but soon I found that I would like to hide behind my lenses and my props and all of my armor because it was an easy escape. And I lived in wine country. Like, I mean, the other project I was working on besides my business was a wine book. Of course I was. I mean, and it was beautiful. I photographed the photojournalistic side of the winemaking process, interviewed the workers. That book has never seen the light of day. It was not to be for me. Um, I had this vision of book touring all over Canada, going to wineries, not in my cards. So one January, my mother, who was the light of my life, the love of my life, actually, she invited me to a movie called Wild. And I'm sure you guys have seen it by Reese Witherspoon, and she plays Cheryl Strayed. This is where the power of motion and story comes into play. This was a pivotal day for me. On the drive home, my mother said, "Is there something wrong? I just know something's not right with you." And I said, "I think so. I prayed the other day, and I knew there was lots wrong with my, suburban closed doors." And as a mother, she just opened that up for me. And that invitation to that film was the beginning of it. And she was my first angel and always will be. So the prayer went something like this: God, in my studio, amongst my armor and all my lenses, I remember it so vividly. Please bring me angels. I can't do this alone anymore. And at that moment, I had a vision in my mind's eye, and I was holding a light. And I was walking on a stage, and in that light, it was filled with hope. And at my feet were grandmothers, mothers, and daughters. And after that movie, I walked to my front porch, and there was a box, and it was beautifully wrapped. And it was from the girl from Victoria who had invited me to live with her. And inside it said, "Don't lock away the memories." She'd written some hand letters. We had no phones back then. She was writing me letters when I was tree planting. And the letters had said, don't lock away the memories in this box. We need to make more. And then that was like my second, I believe, angel. That was like, what am I doing? Like, this life is just, I'm sinking. And so sure enough, one by one, they would come, the angels that I prayed for, literally. And soon after, I would meet a lady named Raquel. She would be a client of mine, and she would invite me to a faith-based study. And half of those women are still in my life today. And just before, me and the friend who left the box, we connected shortly after. I reached out, and we decided to do a challenge. And with challenge, as we know, comes reward. And so we decided to hike for 30 days up a mountain called Knox. And we did that. And I think I did it hungover most days, to be honest. The drinking was happening, and I could bounce sort of back at that time. I say sort of, like, you're just doing it when you're younger. I laugh. It's not funny. But I think I was hungover for maybe 15 of the 30 days and hiking a mountain. And on the 30th day, my phone shattered. It flipped out of my hand, literally, and it scattered on the floor, on the pavement. And it was an ignite moment for me. It was so I'd completed this challenge, and it was as if the phone was a metaphor telling me it's time. And we had planned on the hike to go see Tony Robbins, like the day after our accomplishment, and just go flip and, walk on fire, as we did. We walked on fire. You chant, yes, 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 and you go walk on fire. So we did that. And when I got home, I left him, and I never saw him again. And I haven't to this day. So I got away from my marriage, and I forgave him actually very early on. I remember forgiving him to his face, actually. But now I had to face myself. This would be hard. This would not be as easy. He liked to battle. So the untangling of that marriage lasted a while. But as a good story plot goes, and as they say in the film world, there's always the bad guys that close in. And that comes just near the end of the movie before the hero's journey, usually, not always, but unfolds. By this time in the story, I'd seen a girl in the forest. I thought she was a ghost. I was walking and I was really, really trying to get out of this merry-go-round that I was on. I didn't know what it was yet. I just knew I was in trouble. And she passed me not once, but twice, but 3 times on this loop that I was doing where I'd collect little bits of nature and take photographs. And I was making a collage. And I stopped her on the 3rd time. She was, I believe, the next, angel. And I said, you're reminding me of who I was when I was younger. She was about 10 years younger than me. And I said, and you're igniting something in me. You're reminding me of the mountains when I felt most free. And I'm going to make a movie about you one day. And she just went, okay, whatever. And we did. We made that short film. It's a 3-minute film. And she is in my film that, if you've watched it, the Lighthouse Project. She's the girl running in the forest at the beginning. And so I was gaining some traction, I thought. So, until I went to my mother's door one day and I said, you're yellow. And we took her to the hospital that day and they diagnosed her on the spot that she would have 8 weeks to live. No warning, no buildup, nothing. She always journaled and she liked to live in candlelight in the morning. So she hadn't noticed she turned yellow. So she passed away in 6 weeks. And I drank my way through her diagnosis and through her death. But because my faith and my spirituality, I believe, is so strong, I had a dream about her the night before. She passed, and it was really clear. And she had actually said some words to me the day before. She said, Danya, don't lose your light. You're a gift. Don't lose your light. And it really hurt her. And then I had the dream that she was, I pushed her off her hospice bed into this lake where my dad and mom met in this desert. And she dove in and she exploded into a mermaid. It was the most beautiful dream I ever had. And when she passed, I was there. I had actually gone to lay on the couch. I was tired. I was hungover. And the nurse tapped me on my shoulder and said, she's gone. And I said, no, she is not. And I had a fit. I had a screaming rage in the hospice that she's not gone. And I walked down to her room with the nurse and she came back. She started breathing again because all I wanted to do was hold her hand before she passed. And I did. I got that opportunity. And so I drowned myself even deeper into my drinking. I thought it was just enough of an accomplishment to leave him. And that was a big feat. And it reminded me when your last guest said that the drinking protected her, or I forget the words, and it did me. My mom predicted I would take her death very hard. She told me that about 5 years before she died. She said, Danya, you're going to take my death really hard. I think she had visions too. And I didn't really think about that. And she said, but I don't want you to. She was telling me that it was going to happen, but I felt that she spoke those words on me as well, as we know how powerful words are. So my mom passed and COVID hit. So triple whammy, divorce, mom, COVID. And I wasn't like Dana. I didn't get redemption in COVID. I drank my way through COVID. And I had an older daughter who drank along with me. And so after COVID, my friend, First Angel, she sends me a message. I think you need to get out of your house. You're a photojournalist. You're always at the computer. Like, come work at my little store. And it's a consignment store. And I took her up on that offer. It was called Home Again. Where's the irony in that? So I go work at this magical little store again because I'm just convinced all these angels are helping me along the way. I'm going to get there. And I meet some wild people in that store. One in particular who I hired to help me with some energy work. She literally released something out of my body and I could walk again. I was becoming disabled 1000% at this point in the story. I would be like, how far's the car? I need to sit at the stool at the consignment center. I was slowly shutting down inside. The excessive amounts of food mixed with the alcohol and the sadness, it was taking a massive toll on my body. But at that time, I had to do something. So I started writing a little bit, just a little bit. And I wrote a poem called I Have Come to Believe. And that was about my mom. And at that point, I got another call from a friend. And she said was getting in the publishing world. She was the lady that helped me with the initial book, the red and white book, the wine book. She was getting into more inspirational topics. And she said, I'm now doing these chapter books, as we see are all very popular now. But I jumped on one and it was the best thing I could have done because it gave me some purpose and some structure. And I knew I was a great photographer. The writing, not so much. Now I know that it was the alcohol that always crowded that in me. So crowded that creativity in me. So she said, come do this chapter. And then I did this chapter in Love Ignite. I sent it to you guys. I don't know if you had a chance to read it, but it just was so great because I got to do something from start to finish. It wasn't all me in this book. And I could tell my story and I was healing, especially through the divorce was not hard after my mother died. I would take that anytime, you know? So, and then I ended up getting another opportunity to write a grant with Tell Us Story Hive. It's an amazing program in our community here in Canada that allows creatives to share their stories and produce. And so I wrote a grant for that while I was working at the little Home Again store, and I got denied the first time. I cried. I was like, oh, because this is going to be next. This is what I'm going to do. And then another opportunity came out. And that was, again, just another process for me to go, you did it, you tried it. Now let's really try it. Let's do it better. And let's get a professional person to film the 3-minute teaser. And at this point, I'd had another invitation from my friend Yvette, who owns a wellness center here, who had told me that she saw me dancing wearing yellow and that this wellness center wasn't going to heal me. I was going to heal myself. Another moment of ownership. Her daughter is a beautiful filmmaker from LA, born and raised here in Canada, and she was doing her first feature film here in Kelowna, and they asked my daughter to be an extra. Of course, I said yes for my daughter, but I sat in the car the entire time, still drinking at this point. But what I saw when I picked her up one day was Courtney in the director role. And I was like, that's what I want to do. And so she sparked something in me as well. And then moving on, sorry, this is getting long. After I got the grant the second time, it was called Game Changers. And here you see this film that I have shown you, and I've just also taken to Vegas recently. And it's a local story, but it has a big impact. And I didn't really know that until recently, because through the making of that film, I was so sick. I remember doing some filming in the yoga studio and I sat at the back and I thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to die. As soon as every take was over, of course, I was home drinking because it had gotten a hold on me. I had crossed over that other side. I think it's in Annie Grace's book. The sand was like drawn, like I was on this ride. I didn't drink every day. I was more of a binge drinker, but it had gotten a hold of me. And I describe it as I was on a merry-go-round. It was moving too fast and I was moving too slow. Like I couldn't get off. And so I finished the film and put it to bed. I was like, good job. You got through that. Like, here you are, the director behind the lens, interviewing women about domestic violence, addiction, leadership, inspiration, and you're almost like a fraud. But little did I know they were planting these seeds for me. They were there to help me along the way. And I felt I was making everyone else look good, as I did most of my life. I made everyone else look beautiful in their wedding pictures, in their family photographs. I went so far as to do a full entire documentary on Pam Ratter for the supplementary program in Game Changers because I just had to. And it's gorgeous. I could probably put that into something because I saw so much in her story. So I was like, this is what I do, but wait, what about me? And so my kids were scared at this point. They had both had talks with me. Ashton would have been 15 and Gracie 22. They were scared for me. Ashton had walked in on me a few times, hiding alcohol. Great. All my relationships were starting to fail, as they do. What you just can't catch up anymore. Obviously the work was still somewhat shining, but like imagine what I could have done if I was like actually coherent during that. But and I also became unrecognizable at that time. I did not know who I was. Everything I did, I couldn't trust myself. And that Reiki lady or the energy lady I told you about, she had put a sticky note in my cupboard the day that we released some of that major energy I talked about, and it said, "Trust me." And I had lost all trust in myself. And so it was a snowy day in January, just before, well, it had been 2023. And I looked outside and I was scared. I was scared of the snow. I was like, it's scary outside. The economy is going to fall. I'm going to lose everything. What's happened? I was so scared of the snow, but it was actually a beautiful, just snowy day. I just had lost everything that I knew to be me. And so I walked into my laundry room and there was a picture of a little girl holding a red balloon. I don't know if you know the artist Heather, but it's a famous artist. That has significance because I bought the second property because of this picture. It was a sign. I must buy this property because it's the girl holding the red balloon. But I looked closer this time at the picture and I realized that the girl wasn't holding the balloon. The balloon was detached from her hand. So it was time to let go. And I remembered a story from my very first experience with a reflexologist energy worker. And she was doing some work on my feet in my 20s. And she said, "Why do I keep picturing you in the corner holding these balloons? You're holding on so tight at this party. Everyone around you is having fun, but you can't let go." That vision came back to me. And she also said that I was hiding things in my closet. And that's what I always did. That's where I would hide my alcohol. And so here's where the bad guys close in. The story doesn't get better at this point, it gets worse. I got a fateful call. I'd now moved back to my other property. I'd sold that one. That was not the right decision for me. And I was home, and one morning I got a FaceTime call from my daughter, Gracie, who's 23. Mother's worst nightmare. She's on FaceTime. I'm completely hungover. I am like, I am feeling it's not going to be long now before either I wake up and I'm going to be gone, or I feel like I'm dying inside physically, not just like I can barely walk go to the bathroom at this point. And she phones me and says, Mom, I've been badly beaten. He beat me. And I knew that the boy she was with was dangerous. She'd spoken up about that at Christmas. And this was April. So April 2023. And I got on the phone with the police after she talked to me. She was completely drunk on the phone call. And so I knew she was out of her wits, and he had really badly beaten her. And I'm like, how is this happening? Like, I just did a documentary on domestic violence. I've come out of that. Like, is this how it works? Is this really how it works? Like does she, like, is this the pattern? I guess, this is my life, and it is my life. And I got on the phone with the police, and they said, you must get her home from Vancouver, because he's going to jail, and he's going to get back out in 24 hours, and he's going to come find her. And they told me all about him. He was a predator. She had been living with a predator. He wasn't even the age he was. Like, this was like my worst nightmare. She was out of sorts. I could not have gotten on a plane if I needed to that day. I could not have driven in a car. I got her home. I convinced her to get on a plane, and she came home. And so Gracie's upstairs in this place that I'm at right now, and she's been harmed. I go into mummy fix mode, pure, I've got some energy. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix me. It's going to happen. And I call a counselor, Pam, who's in my movie. And she had been working with Gracie a little bit before she had left for Vancouver to move out of the nest. And she came over for a semi-intervention, and we had a talk, and things were settling a little bit. I have her home. It's going to be okay. And Pam phones me 2 days after, I believe. And she says, Danya, she goes, Gracie's home now, and she's going to be okay, but you're in crisis. Like, obviously she could see it. I could not hide it from anyone any longer. And I was like, was it the medicine man at the film we were filming? Like, he saged me. Like, did he tell her something? I don't know. He probably did. So I told my daughter that, nope, wait, I pray again. I have another moment. It's like another eat, pray, love moment, but I really did. In my bathroom, I sure didn't get on the ground. I prayed, and I said, show me anything, please, please, please. This is it. Like, I am begging. She is upstairs. My other daughter is suffering from severe anxiety. Everything is just falling apart. And I got a clear vision. Go back to the Chilcotin Valley. I don't know what that means. So I get on my internet, resourceful photojournalist person, typing in anything. Chilcotin Valley is like towards Kamloops. I'm thinking geographic. I'm very visual. I type in wellness center, anything, retreat, help. I probably typed in recovery. And what came up on the screen were 3 trees. 3 is my number, by the way, if you haven't kind of connected. No coincidence, year 3. Yeah, I think this is the 3rd season. I don't know. 3 is my number. So this internet website came up, 3 trees. 1 tree had a person in it, and the second had a person in the third, but the 1 tree had no leaves. Then the second tree had some leaves. And the 3rd tree was thriving. It was green. And I phoned, and that was my outpatient treatment center. Juanita answered the phone. I said, are you going to touch me? Are you going to prod me? Are you going to take my phone away? Oh, this is outpatient. You come from 10 to 2. I drive an hour from Kelowna to Vernon. I said, I'll come. I'll come. So I told my daughters. They were happy. They were happy. They were sick of me doing another coaching program, another this, but all of that was part of the journey. Like, I don't discount any of it. I was so curious. But as I walked out the door, this exact place where this painting hangs for you guys today, it doesn't normally hang there. I opened the door and my two little birdies upstairs, Gracie and Ashton, said, I hadn't even begun, said, Mom, we're so proud of you. This is like 7 a.m. in the morning. Gracie had only been home a week. And I drove that road to Vernon, listening to you guys. Literally, you guys are my people. I did meetings. I did the 12 steps. I did it all. I dedicated my year and more. I'm a year and 3 months sober now, but everything changed that day that I walked out the door because I surrendered. I truly surrendered. And I know everybody doesn't have it this easy. I just want to make that really clear on this platform being here today. I know it's hard. For me, it wasn't. I never had a craving. I never have today. It was just done. I was done. And I got my life back. And so during this year of recovery, I've met many more magical angels. I've met Maria, who I work with in EFT tapping, and she does a beautiful teen program for these youth, like giving them the skills that I would have wished for. Journaling, moving energy, breath work. So I realized that once you heal the mother, you heal the family. And I know Don Nichols has said that, but it's true. I mean, it's so true. And my daughter struggled most of this year with alcohol, and she's 6 weeks sober today.
That's amazing.
I know. And so to end, I just got home from Vegas I drove from Kelowna to Salt Lake to Boise, San Francisco, around the Oregon coast, up to Victoria. And on a map, it looks like a lighthouse. Mm-hmm. And I was supposed to do this journey like in September, but this girl, JB, who does the book stuff, she phoned me and said, we're doing this big thing in Vegas. Come celebrate your movie. And I was like, oh, I put that movie to bed. Like that was like a healing journey movie. She was, no, you need to come. And it was just after the full moon. I don't know if you guys are into the moon. I totally am. I'm affected by it. And it was the pink April's moon. And after that moon, my energy just sort of catapulted me into this new energy. Maria, who I work with, she does numerology. She said, you're in a 4-year, you're going to move this year. You're going to travel. You're going to do things. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I got in my car and I did this solo journey. And there's many more stories. I won't tell you the details of that, but I just got home and I left on Mother's Day. And yeah, the greatest gifts I've had. You asked where I am now, my sobriety. I mean, the things I've done in 1 year, even though the first 6 months I was surviving because I was so sick, I probably should have gone into inpatient and gone to the hospital. Most likely I was carrying at least 60 more pounds than I have now. I haven't weighed myself. I've got ways to go. And but the things I've done, like I've seen Coldplay with my daughter. I felt uneasy, scary. First concert after but that was like on a bucket list. That was my first song on my first website, so like the beauty of that being sober. I just saw Sarah McLachlan. I grew up with her. Like she's a poet. It was amazing. And I only mention these events because I never did any of that. And even in my I checked out so much as we do. But I ended up getting this second grant for the new film I'm working on, Just Breathe. And it is all about how we store energy in our bodies and how we can release it. And again, um, the connection between healing ourselves through letting go, releasing things that no longer serve us. And what I realized was it was the alcohol that took everything from me, took all of my creativity from me near the end. And I had to say goodbye to it.
Mm. I will be completely honest with you. That's probably one of the most emotional stories we've had. Just on the realm of, I think you're very eloquent in getting your words out. So huge praise to you. Your story is fantastic. And I think you had emailed me when we were going back and forth, and you were like, oh my gosh, our stories are so similar and they have so many similarities. It's not even funny. But the one thing that I really resonated with was how all of a sudden you can find yourself completely consumed and you cannot get off that hamster wheel. I think that is what kept me. I think that's what keeps people in addiction. Is it's easier in that moment to stay there and suffer, if you will, versus trying really hard to get off and stay off. And I was the same way. I would look in the mirror and I'd be like, who in the hell is this? I look different. I'm acting different. I am not myself. Like, but that was the hamster wheel. Like, that is, it's funny how you see all that hindsight, but in the moment, you're like, well, the easiest thing to do now is just go drink. And that was the default. That was always my default for emotion, for anger, for trauma, for conflict, happy, celebrating. Like, it did not matter what it was. So I think that your story is phenomenal. I'm so glad that you are on here. Heather, Dana, who wants to go next?
I'll hop in. Yeah, I agree with what Meredith said. And we've had opportunities. I've had an opportunity to hear your poetry before, and I've said to you, it's so incredible. It's so poignant, and it really kind of speaks to, what we all kind of experience in this similar thing. We're all different, but we all have similar threads. And I too had this very much a double life, like I was doing these things in my professional world, my professional life, and inadvertently my work was, throwing me into full PTSD states. It was triggering me, and I just kept going, because I just didn't have really awareness at that point of like, until it gets so bad. And then the same thing, I couldn't take care of my kids in the way that I wanted to because I was so emotionally depleted. And the only thing that was, making the Band-Aid work was the alcohol. And, so that duplicity and that just how much energy it takes. And then when you don't put the energy into that anymore, and you no longer are dimming your own light, it's incredible what can happen. It's absolutely incredible. So I love what you have how you've taken your, really your talents and your creativity and used it as a way to present recovery in a way that's really palatable, So thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, during this year, like the art just cracked open. Like I thought I was kind of creative before, but I was like, whoa, like it's like a spirit working through me. I think that's important to note. Not a lot of people want to hear that, but alcohol is a spirit. So it wants to take us down. You know, there is lightness and there is darkness. And when we use that spirit, which is a poison, which is a drug, it's just crushing everything inside of us that wants to come out. And when we're lights, when we are creatives, it still comes out, but it's quite mind-boggling what could come out after we let that go.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And there's so much that I picked, and I was writing notes and I was doing all sorts of things, and it's an amazing story. And thank you for sharing with us and with our audience. I know, like Meredith said, this will touch so many people. I had a coaching business before I got sober, and it was a health and wellness coaching business. And I could never understand why it never got off the ground, why I was never confident enough, while I was never like, I didn't have all these clients and everything else. And there's this huge cloud called alcohol that was hanging over me that I didn't even think about, because everybody drank. Red wine's good for you, you know, and it just never occurred to me that that spirit was one that was shoving me down, keeping me in the darkness, keeping me from doing what I needed to do to be able to serve others. And that, in hindsight, is very apparent now, with what I've learned and being sober and everything. And then the other thing that I wanted to touch on that I really got from you was, that failing isn't an option, that failing for you was growth, and that it has produced so many of these things. It came out of your grant writing, that part of your story that you're talking about. So that part really spoke to me too, is that you can't let failure become who you are. You have to take it and learn from it and grow from it. And it allows you to open up so many doors. And I'm glad it has for
I
you.
love
It's
that you
amazing.
bring that up. Sorry, I just cut you off there. Because there's more to the details. I lost the entire second grant on my computer, and I was in bed, and my daughter was just home and I was like, and it was due within 24 hours. There's a timeline, and I had an option to either rewrite it or not, again, in my addiction. And I did. And here I am now shooting this next one. And I believe, again, that was the enemy trying to take me down. Yeah, the perseverance was uncanny at the time, because I knew that was it. If I didn't, I would be gone.
Well, Dani, I sincerely appreciate your time. This was a fantastic episode. We cannot wait to launch it. Just so people know where they can find you, can you kind of go over your social media, websites, whatever you got?
Yeah, just beginning, meaning rebranding. So you can go on to Just Breathe the documentary on IG. I probably have 5 followers because we're just starting that. And then I just started Danya Katrina Yusep, which is my name, which is going to be all my art. I just produced in that year a card deck. So this is going to be hot off the press soon. So look for it. It's all my paintings and writings. And then hopefully there'll be a book with that. But I did pull a card for you guys if we want to leave on that note.
Let's do it.
It's a little girl. And most of the pictures are after Dani. It's me.
Oh.
No, she grows up through the cards and turns and everything. But this is as she opened the curtain. Not so prickly. As she opened the curtain, she could hear the birds singing outside the pink sunrise. She could see shapes in the clouds that sparked her creativity. She enjoyed how the sunshine warmed her skin. All these things, the chirping, the brightness, and the warmth, no longer seemed to feel so prickly. She had found a different way, and this was her new beginning. And then you have a word prompt with that, but you'll have to buy the deck to get that. Just joking. I can send it to you. Yeah, so this is my heart. This is I guess, what do you say, a legacy to your children. I was doodling as I was listening to you all in my car, and they just sort of turned into all of this explosion.
I love it. That is the
Love it.
perfect way to end this episode.
And I'm at 1%.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Dani, again, we appreciate your time. And we look forward
Thank
to,
you so much for this
of
platform.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah,
guys
thank
are-
you.
Absolutely. We
You
were
guys are-
honored to be part of your
You ever need
journey.
a fourth chick? Just joking. I like the 3. It's less intimidating for some reason. I like the 3.
Oh, I love it. Okay, bye.
All right. Bye.